Right. Hi again. I hope everyone enjoyed their meal and some great conversation. In appreciation for that wonderful meal and for proving once again that engineers are much happier when well fed, please join me in thanking the chef, the kitchen, and wait staff.
We would now like to take this opportunity to invite fellow USask engineering students and Husky football athletes Seth Hundeby and Ryker Frank to the stage to introduce our 49th Distinguished Lecturer, Rob Dutton.
Good evening, everyone. As Olivia and Caden noted, my name is Seth Hundeby, and I'm an engineering student and just finished my 5th year with the Husky football team.
And I'm Ryker Frank. I'm also an engineering student, and I just finished my 5th year with the team as well. Yeah, thank you. Now, I know Seth's not the type of guy to brag about himself, so being a good teammate, I'm going to do it for him. Just like our distinguished guest of honor, Rob Dutton, was back in the day, Seth has been drafted to the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
I appreciate that, Ryker, especially coming from the player who broke the Husky all-time touchdown record and the all-time rushing record. But we're not here to just talk about ourselves. We're here tonight to introduce someone who truly bridges the two worlds we know well: student athletics and engineering.
For those who might not know, Rob isn't just an alumnus. He literally walked the path that Seth and I are on right now. He was a Husky football player and engineering student. In 1990, he brought home the Vanier Cup, earning recognition as the top team in U Sports. That experience, being in the trenches with his teammates, taught him accountability, sacrifice, and how important every role is on a team. And that shaped him into who he is today.
Off the field, Rob pursued a chemical engineering degree from the University of Saskatchewan, setting himself up for a lifetime of leadership, technical knowledge, and that same grit all of us USask engineers are known for. Today, he's a professional engineer and executive leader with more than 30 years of experience spanning the energy, power generation, and industrial sectors. He is currently an advisor with Augur Venture Capital, which combines artificial intelligence and energy innovation, where he provides strategic and operational guidance to support the growth of the next generation of the technological ventures.
From 2019 to 2024, Rob served as CEO and board member of Heartland Generation Limited, one of Alberta's largest independent power producers. Under his leadership, the company advanced initiatives that improved operational performance, strengthened safety culture, and supported the transition to cleaner, more sustainable energy sources.
Before leading Heartland, Rob spent more than a decade with Devon Canada Corporation, where he had held a range of senior roles culminating in his appointment as president of Devon Canada in 2014. In that position, he led all facets of a 130,000 barrel per day upstream oil and gas enterprise staffed with over 3,000 employees. He previously served as vice president of facilities, where he managed large-scale capital programs for Devon's thermal and conventional operations, and was instrumental in building some of the most advanced steam-assisted gravity drainage facilities in Canada. Rob also served as chair of the board of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers from 2017 to 2018, representing industry perspectives on national energy policy and innovation. Earlier in his career, Rob held engineering and leadership roles with ConocoPhillips Canada, Anadarko Canada, and Archer Daniels Midland Corporation, working in both operations and major project delivery. His experience ranges from managing oil sands and natural gas infrastructure in Western Canada to contributing to one of the first liquefied natural gas facilities ever permitted in Nova Scotia.
As you can clearly see, Rob has led a remarkable and inspiring career, but what's even more inspiring is how Rob continues to give back. With his wife, Narissa, they recently made a transformative gift to support the new engineering design hub, as well as the expansion of the Graham Huskie Football Clubhouse. Both of these spaces will empower future engineers and athletes alike to innovate, collaborate, and live up to our university's motto, be what the world needs. Rob and Narissa are clearly lifelong Huskies, cheering us all on to learn, grow, and succeed.
His commitment goes beyond donations and philanthropy. Rob has spent over 20 years mentoring young people and coaching football. In both, he stresses the values of teamwork, accountability, and perseverance, qualities he learned while at the University of Saskatchewan. The same qualities that he credits to effective engineering and leadership.
So, without further ado, it's our honor tonight to introduce someone who represents the pinnacle of USask engineering and the spirit of being a Huskie. Please join us in welcoming the 49th C.J. Mackenzie Distinguished Lecturer and one of our own, Rob Dutton.
Well, good evening, everybody. I presume you can hear me all the way to the back. I don't know there's much left to be said. It's been a very humbling experience to listen to the folks who have preceded me on the stage tonight talk about the things that I've done over the years, and I feel quite blessed. So with that, there's been lots of thank yous tonight, so I'm not going to belabor it. But certainly the organizers, sponsors, volunteers, the Emcees, who have been doing a fantastic job, I think. I'm always so impressed with the students when they come up and do this. I want to thank Dean Bradley and the selection committee. I believe there was more than just himself offering up this opportunity. I have to confess, he kind of buttonholed me at one of the Husky games I think it was the homecoming game, and asked me if I would do this. And in all fairness, I kind of looked at him with kind of a wide-eyed sort of stare, I think, is how it kind of came across, because I was truly and quite honestly taken aback. I never expected anything like this to be something that I would be standing here and addressing this group tonight. So thank you to the folks that have the confidence that I would represent the station well. I want to thank my colleagues and friends in the crowd tonight, for those who have come and have been a part of my journey along the way. And certainly I want to say thank you to my family. My folks I'm blessed to have them with us tonight. My children, newly minted son-in-law in the crowd, and thanks to all of them. But certainly I want to recognize my wife, Narissa. She is someone who's been by my side the whole way through. And I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to be in some roles that really require two people if you want to do them properly. And she's been my partner the whole way through, so thank you, Narissa. So there's been so much said already, and it's funny, you compare some notes, and then you kind of compare the day before. There's other things that are going to sort of, the Venn diagram overlaps a bit. So, I think it's been said already, my career didn't follow a straight line. I was lucky enough to see a number of different industries, from the food processing industry, oil and gas, and electricity generation. And I didn't necessarily intend this to be the case, but the connecting link between those things is those are some of the things that we use as human beings every single day. And we as Canadians, and specifically Western Canadians, are blessed with the opportunity to extract the resources that we've been blessed with, and to use them for our benefit and the benefit for all. So those industries had very different technologies, different risks, different profiles, public profiles. But there was one constant. They all depended on capable and competent engineers getting things right, and more importantly, getting things done. There's been too much, I think, in the recent past where we've aspired to build, and we've aspired to create, and we have been unable to do so. So I'm going to leave that as a bit of a hanging commentary for the moment, but I'd like us all to sort of reflect on what we have around us and what we can use it to do to create wealth and prosperity for all of us. So, my presentation tonight is very easy to follow. Almost no words, almost all pictures. So you won't have to squint too hard to read what's been written. There's very little written at all. But as I think you heard, my first role out of university was in food processing in ADM. Moved to Windsor, Ontario, and it was an extraction plant. We made, or didn't make it. We extracted canola and soybean oil, and that was my first foray into the work world, and it was a real eye-opener. Now, I don't know if anyone in the room has ever worked for that company, but they pride themselves on being very hands-on. And my first role was as hands-on as it got. It was coveralls, channel lock pliers, and a flashlight. And the hourly guys used to refer to me as Luke Floorwalker. and it was a very interesting experience for me. It was hands-on. It was dirty. It was sweaty. We did a lot of things, and I learned a lot about how a facility works, the importance of uptime, the importance of no excuses. We had quotas to make. We had things to do, and it was a difficult run. And I'm sure anyone who was around me that time knows it was a 24/7 experience. My phone would ring night and day, and off I'd go in there to unplug a chute or fix a transfer pump or something that would come up. But it taught me a lot, and it was an important. I kind of joked. It was more of at the time, it was more of a complaint, but I look back on it as a joke now. But, I went through, well, in my case, I was at university for 6 years. Two years in arts and 4 years in engineering. I said, I have a college degree, and I'm coming home sweatier and dirtier than I ever imagined. And I kind of complained to myself and anyone else who would listen about that, but it did teach me a lot. So, if there's opportunities in your future to those who are just getting started, and they look sort of not sexy, and they look a little bit, beneath your station, jump, go for it. You will learn more about yourself and how the world works by going to those difficult places and doing difficult things. But that ran its course. And I'll tell you just a quick story. I came home one night and it was enough. Enough was enough. And I bought literally, this is before, of course, there was any kind of maps or anything on a tablet or a computer. So I went and I bought a map from the gas station and a bottle of wine. Came home to Narissa and said, I can't do this anymore. We're going to drink the wine. We're going to open the map. We're going to pick a place we want to move to, and we'll see if we'll triangulate to a place. Turns out that place was Calgary. So that was that. I started applying for roles in Calgary and ended up landing something, but it was very entry level and it felt like starting over again. I had invested at that point 5, almost 6 years into my career and found myself sort of starting again. Literally doing data books for an engineering firm in Calgary. But that quickly changed fortune smiled and a little bit of hard work and moved into some different roles within the industry, and I think you've heard a few of the things that led to. So, and I'll elaborate a little bit more with some further anecdotes along the way, but certainly it was a change. And one of the things, I guess, and I was talking with some of the Emcees, either it was today or probably today, and we were just chatting a little bit, and you know, it was important for me to understand at that point, and it became sort of a bit of a hallmark through my career, which was I sought opportunity without knowing exactly how to. I wasn't a master at it, but I knew I had enough resolve and resource and understanding to figure it out when I got there. And I think it's important to take those chances and to trust yourself and to be self-led. You don't need to have the 100% solution to really find yourself in a spot where you can learn, grow, and push yourself and expand and do things that you didn't think you could do. But as time went on and all the good things come to an end, in my last role within the oil and gas sector, at least to this point, the company was sold. Murray Edwards and the CNRL juggernaut came knocking one day, and that was the end of Devon Canada, so that left me looking for a new role. Now, at that point, wasn't really sure where I was going to go or where I was going to land. Talked to some folks, and next thing you know, I'm the CEO of a power generation company in Alberta. And I see Mike smiling because he knows what I'm about to say is absolutely true. The electricity generation in the electricity business is an arcane art on a good day. And it took me a lot of catching up to how things worked in the electricity business. You know, I think what struck me the most about that business, which was, you know, it's a very public-facing experience. I think our relationship with electricity is more intimate than any of us would want to admit. When the lights go out and the furnace stops running, it gets our attention. And that was something that was new to me as a leader. And I certainly found myself being very, how would I put it? I found myself being very attuned to those sorts of things. And so, you know, in the electricity business, reliability is measured in minutes. Policy, decarbonization, and system integration are not future considerations, they're immediate constraints. So as you heard too, I'm currently an advisor to Augur VC, which is a venture capital fund focused on AI infrastructure and the AI to make those systems operate more efficiently. Again, I'm learning something brand new from the bottom floor because I don't know. You can see from my resume that it wasn't AI focused, that's for sure. But I find myself learning and trying to understand as the world changes. But somewhere along the way, as all those roles kind of came and evolved, it became clear to me that while the discipline of engineering hadn't changed, my understanding of what success maybe had. And I'll maybe elaborate on what I'm getting to. I'm getting a puzzled look from Darcy right now, so. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. But when I entered the profession, my model of a good engineer was clear, at least in my mind. You mastered the technical fundamentals, you defined the problem, you optimized within known constraints, and if the math worked and the system performed, success followed. And early in my career, that model held true. I can point to projects where technical excellence and good engineering alone delivered the outcome. But early in my career, I can also point out that the scope was defined, stakeholders were fewer, and the measures of success were largely internal. It was a simpler time in my career. But over time, as my projects and stakeholders evolved, this changed. Not because engineering became less rigorous, but because the definition of success became broader, more complex, and more contested. So the environment was changing around me. You know, I'll probably state the obvious, but I'll say it because I am spanning back 30 years, and you'll have to forgive me, that feels like a long time now, but things have changed, as you all understand. The circle of stakeholders who now have a legitimate interest in engineering decisions has expanded dramatically. over that time period. And with that expansion comes new expectations of how we as engineers show up, communicate, and take responsibility. It's a bit of a different experience than it was today than it was 30 years ago when I was a graduating student. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of what I'm talking about. This is from the archives of Rob. This is Rob's first project, first real project, big one. This is in Watson, Saskatchewan, for anyone who's driven through. And maybe some of you might recognize it, and many of you probably don't. I was dropped literally off as a two and a half year engineer, left in Watson, and was asked to get that done in 9 months from the ground up. And I won't go through the details. This still is my favorite project after all the years. It was absolutely one of my most favorite projects. But what I'll tell you is when I got there, the support was unparalleled. The mayor, the reeve, the person who's checking groceries, the gas station, people were excited about the prospect of this terminal coming to town. The permitting process was remarkably simple and uncomplicated. The environmental permits were, I won't say they were a rubber stamp, but we didn't jump through a lot of hoops. And literally in 9 months, that came to fruition. And that's not necessarily why it's my favorite project. And for anyone who's interested, I'll explain why sort of after the fact, because it's a story that doesn't bear repeating here now, but it was a great project. Fast forward 10 years later, Nurse and I find ourselves in Cape Breton. And the task of the day was to build a LNG, liquefied natural gas receiving terminal. For anyone following along, that's sort of a weird thing to be thinking about doing in Canada. But we were going to bring LNG into Nova Scotia, use a power plant down the way with their waste heat, regasify and send gas down the east coast of the US. This was a part of the world that doesn't know anything about oil and gas necessarily outside of Sable. And certainly the prospect of bringing LNG tankers into that harbor was a daunting one for the people of that community. And there was no reference or framework from the regulatory people that had any notion of what LNG was or what it could do. And so they were afraid. I'll call it what it was. The citizens were concerned. The government was concerned. Everyone wanted to do business, but they didn't really understand what they were getting into. And I found myself locked in this battle, and I was waging a technical one, when the battle was actually not a technical battle. It was more for hearts and minds and understanding. And I didn't know that my job was to get understanding about what we were trying to do. I was busy, and Dean and I have talked about this in the last 2 days, I was pummeling him with spreadsheets and technical answers to technical questions. And really what I should have been focused on were the hearts and minds and getting the people in that community to understand that what we were doing was safe, was technically feasible, and wasn't going to endanger their way of life. I didn't necessarily appreciate that. There's a young Rob staring over the trees that just got cut down, and that was the plot plan of the facility that actually never got built. And I'll tell you why it didn't get built. And I'll talk about it in a second, but there was some hubris on behalf of our marketing people in Oklahoma, or in Houston at the time, that they could secure a supply, that wasn't the issue. We never did get a supply of LNG. The market changed, everything went upside down, and it made no sense to continue with this project. We spent $130 million on that, and then had to put it to bed and walk away. Now, the good news was I did secure the very first LNG permit that Nova Scotia had issued. But that was only after I guess, in many sense, won the hearts and minds of the folks in town. The fire chief, the mayor, the people who influenced inside their own community. We flew them down to to College Station, Texas, to the fire school. And we literally played with LNG to give them the confidence that we were doing, and we knew what we were doing, and they went back and they became advocates. But it took me a bit to figure that out. So one thing I will mention, that plant is the Lister australis, the southern tway blade. It was also the first time in my career where we had to really be environmental stewards. So you saw that big plot plan I just put up there? We got half done when one of the biologists on one of their routine walkabouts found that. That required an entire redo of that, to the tune of a few $1,000,000. But it highlighted to me too that the size of the thing isn't really what's important. It's the preservation. That is an orchid, by the way, the southern tway blade. I became quite an expert, unwillingly, on the southern tway blade. But it highlighted to me, it was the first time in my career where something like that was going to derail something like this. But it was a fact of life, and it became something that I had to understand. Heretofore that point, I'm not sure that would have got a mention or even a bother. But here we were, and we were making big decisions and redoing the whole plot plan over that orchid. So, what did I learn? Being technically right wasn't the same as being successful. We have to be technically right. I'm not saying you don't. I'm saying that doesn't guarantee success. And so there's something else we have to do as engineers. You know, the public has always been affected by engineering projects. But what's evolved was how directly and immediately those concerns are expressed and how quickly they can shape outcomes. Public trust has become a design constraint. Projects live or die not only on their performance, financially and technically, but on whether people understand them, believe in them, and feel respected by the process. That's a tall order, my friends, but it's important that we understand that that is our accountability. So what I would say is engineers are increasingly expected to explain and not just defend their work. Too often, explanations sound like defense. Explaining something ensures or needs the other party to actually understand and tell you back what you said. So, I'll give you one more small example of me getting it wrong. If I couldn't, this is another thing that I've just put out there, if I couldn't explain a system clearly, I probably didn't understand it as well as I thought. And what I mean by that, and I'm using system as a very broad umbrella at the moment. I'm not talking about a system of, a facility or a plant or these sorts of things. I'm talking about a system that's larger, something that includes stakeholders and policymakers and all these other, that is the system that we have to work within. And so I was given the job of, we were doing some work up in the Fort Liard area, Northwest Territories. And there's a beautiful large river there, the Liard River. A beast of a river, beautiful. This doesn't quite do it justice, but it was the only picture I could find. And I went up to talk to the community about putting a pipeline under their river. And I walked up there with my PowerPoint and my calculations and spreadsheets and diagrams and all that good stuff. And it's a hard place to get to. There's no direct flights. You can't just get there. It was charter a plane, get a car, get someone to drive you an hour after the charter lands, cross that river. And I got to the community, and they didn't want to meet with me after having agreed. But there had been more discussion that I wasn't obviously privy to, and they asked me to go home. I was dumbfounded. I didn't understand. After some conversation, subsequent, me leaving, not staying, leaving, and calling and having a few more inroads, and decided I would go back and this time maybe to listen and not explain. Came to find out that 30 years before my presence, another oil company had showed up, open trenched that river, and it had been tainted against what the locals had been using it for probably a generation or two. I didn't do my homework. And so I thought, isn't that interesting? So that was me not understanding the system. There were individuals and elders in that community who were there when that had been open trenched. Now, what I was proposing had nothing to do with trenching that river. We were going to drill under it like, half a kilometer under that river and not be anywhere near the water. Once I was able to explain that, allowed to explain that, sentiment changed. They were quite pleased with that. But I walked in there with a bit of hubris and sort of thinking, I was wrong. The other element that I would sort of just ask you to ponder upon as I look at the clock tick down, and I'm taking longer than I thought, is a significant element of my professional growth was the relationship with our Indigenous partners. And I'm talking about my own personal journey, not anyone else's. But, what was once treated by me as a procedural requirement was increasingly being recognized by me as a true partnership. Bringing different knowledge system, long-term perspectives and responsibilities into project development decisions was important. And the company I represented at the time, were developing long-held traditional places for these people that needed to be treated with respect. That is something that had to come to me after the fact. But it did. And, when I was with Devon and we were doing a lot of work in the oil sands, there was a Dene community, Chippewa Prairie, that we did a considerable amount of work in their territory. And became, at points, let's be candid, it was tough. There was tough negotiations. It was two parties trying to protect their interests. But ultimately, we came away with a partnership and some actual, opportunities for the community that have been long-standing now and have resulted in some prosperity for that community. In fact, we ended up with a gross overriding royalty that really made my superiors in Oklahoma uncomfortable, but that was the fair and right thing to do. So taken together, these shifts forced me to confront a simple truth. Technical competence alone was no longer enough if I was to accomplish what I was being asked to do. This is a shot of one of the lodge at one of our jackfish facilities, and I was just referencing. And we would have a lot of the community into our camp come for meals and for suppers, and there was always a Halloween party, and we actually ended up there was no high school available in the community, and so we hired a tutor and a teacher. And actually, we graduated our first high school graduate out of the community back in, I forget, probably 2014, 2015, and it continues to this day. So, back to technical competence alone was no longer enough. So as I was pondering this discussion tonight, I was like, how do I kind of frame what I'm really trying to say? And I boiled it down a little bit into two capabilities that became increasingly important in my own work and my own journey: influence and intuition. Sometimes when you hear the word influence, it can create a bit of an uneasiness, like, I'm not referencing coercion, I'm not referencing getting people to do something they don't want to do. But influence in your career is not about authority or hierarchy, it's about credibility. Influence is earned by consistently demonstrating sound judgment, by understanding the priorities of others, and being able to connect technical realities to broader objectives. That's how you create influence. That's how you connect with people. And engineers who can do this become trusted, not just within their own discipline, but across organizations and across industries. And so, taking the opportunity to be someone who provides sound judgment, who understands the priorities of others, and connecting the technical realities to broader objectives will provide opportunity. This is a picture of a tower in Oklahoma, and that ice cream cone looking thing is a hot lime softener. Think of it as the biggest water softener you've seen. And then there's a large tank. This is the Jackfish project, and I bring it up because this was the first time in my career where I felt I had gained some influence. We were in the process of putting together the project that I had been brought to Devon to complete. It was the second phase of an oil sands project. In and around $1 billion capital spend. Big for this company, big. And I'd been there about a year, and we, collectively, were going down to Oklahoma to get the final approval and to get sanctioned for this project. And at the time, I was the project manager, but my general manager was with me, and his vice president, and there was a whole cadre of people coming down to sit in a wood, literally. We didn't go to that tower, that's the new tower. We went to the old tower back in the day, and it was the darkest, most stereotypical wood-paneled room with no windows you've ever seen. And I was intimidated beyond any measure. And I thought, well, my job will be to sit here and let my bosses kind of take the reins, if you will, and get this project across the line. I remember sitting there, and I had no speaking part in the presentation. I was just there to kind of cheer along, I thought. And the CEO at the time stopped kind of mid-presentation, looked across the table, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Can you do this?" Woof. But I think, and I know, and we spoke about it kind of after the fact, not that day, but like months and years later. He said, "I wanted your opinion. I knew that your boss and his boss were going to just pump the tires off this thing and make it go, but I wanted to hear from you." And I said, well, why? He said, well, you know, you had proven yourself to be someone that I wanted to hear from. And that made me feel very good. It made me feel very frightened at the time, but at the time after we spoke about it, it made me feel very good. So I would just offer that those elements I mentioned earlier are important, and that you carry that through and how you carry yourself through your career. The next thing I'll maybe mention is intuition. And intuition, you'll hear someone, you're born with it. I beg to differ. To me, intuition is I think sometimes it's misunderstood as guesswork. In my opinion, intuition is pattern recognition developed over time. And you may not understand why you feel some ways sometimes, but if you really unpack it, you're unpacking some experience you've had before, something you've learned, something you saw, and you're subconsciously bringing that to bear in your sense of what's coming at you. So as systems grow more complex and data becomes more abundant, engineers are often asked to make decisions before everything is known. In fact, you're almost always asked to make a decision before everything is known. In those moments, experience matters. Judgment matters. And increasingly, engineers are expected to make those calls with real consequences attached. I was thinking of another story from beyond or in the past to kind of bring this one home, but there was just so many. It's just a daily occurrence where as engineers and as leaders, you're asked to make decisions without 100% complete knowledge. And I'm not saying fire away half-cocked like you're guessing at stuff, but I'm saying that the privilege of having every piece of information that makes the answer inevitable is a very rare thing. So you're going to have to trust and create some intuition. But even influence and instinct can only take you so far unless you can integrate across disciplines. Engineering challenges are not solved with a single discipline. They sit at the intersection of technology, economics, policy, environment, and human behavior. And engineers, I think, can take advantage and see how it all fits together. There's a lot of parts there. How do they fit together? Because engineers are trained to understand systems, how inputs become outputs, how failures propagate, how trade-offs must be managed. This systems thinking uniquely positions engineers to act as integrators, to connect specialists, align objectives, and ensure that decisions made in one domain don't undermine another. The most successful projects and companies I've been a part of were ones with clarity of purpose, mutual respect and alignment. Teams that found trust. Hard to build, easy to break. I couldn't do a presentation without the football team being part of it, so here it is. But like any team, you know, you have to understand what the clarity of purpose, the mutual respect and alignment really are. I think engineers can play a central role in creating that alignment and translating across different disciplines. When I was afforded the privilege of becoming the president of Devon Canada, one of the tenets that I kind of brought to my executive boardroom was when the executive came into that room together to meet once a week, whatever discipline, whatever group you represented as the VP of, pick one, drilling, completions, finance, whatever it was, when you came into that meeting, whatever your hat said, finance, drilling, you took it off, you put it in the corner. You still own that hat. That is your hat. And you answer for whatever that comes with that hat. However, when we talk around this table, it's for the betterment of the company, and it comes first in every instance. And so I don't need you lobbying for your group at the expense of someone else's. That's not how we're going to do this. And it really did create what I was happy to say was a great deal of trust and a great deal of openness, and it created alignment. So, sometimes my most valuable contribution wasn't technical, it was coherence in the leading of teams. So, we've heard a little bit about it today already, but no discussion about engineering would be complete without mentioning artificial intelligence. AI has already changed how engineers work, how we model systems, optimize designs, predict failures, and analyze risk. In many narrow tasks, it will outperform us. It will be faster, cheaper, and more consistent. Kind of depressing in some ways. But that does not mean it replaces engineers. As tools become more powerful, responsibility does not disappear. It actually concentrates. AI can generate options. It can optimize within constraints. What it cannot do is take responsibility for outcomes. And that is where we as engineers need to step into that breach. And I implore anyone and all of us who are going to be part of this revolution, is we cannot allow AI or the box in the corner to be responsible. We have to make sure that that doesn't happen. Because engineers will be increasingly asked not to use AI, but to interpret it, to question its assumptions, understand its limits, and decide when answers should not be followed. That requires judgment, it requires ethics, and it requires an understanding of context that currently no algorithm possesses. Which brings me to what this evolution means for the next generation of engineers. I would say for those entering the profession today, the technical foundations remain non-negotiable. You cannot influence what you do not understand. So that's where it starts. But the technical excellence alone will not define success in the decades ahead. These three capabilities will matter more than ever. Technical excellence. This is the baseline. It earns credibility and trust, and without it, nothing else really does matter. Influence. Engineers must be able to communicate clearly, listen actively, and engage across disciplines and perspectives. Influence is not about persuasion. It's about helping others understand, truly understand reality well enough to make a good decision. Intuition and judgment. Engineers must increasingly make decisions under uncertainty, with incomplete data and real consequences. That demands humility, ethical clarity, and the courage to speak up when something doesn't feel right, even when the model says it does. The engineers who thrive will be those who integrate technology, people, and values, not perfectly, but responsibly. So, where does that leave us? So over the course of my career, from food processing, oil and gas, and electricity, the tools changed, the scale changed, scrutiny intensified. But the one thing that remained constant, engineering is a profession of trust. Society grants engineers extraordinary responsibility to design systems that power economies, feed populations, and shape the environment for generations. In return, it expects judgment, integrity, and accountability. The role of the engineer will continue to evolve. Expectations will continue to rise. Technologies will continue to accelerate. The engineers who make the greatest impact may not necessarily be the ones with the most elegant designs, but the ones who can hold complex systems together, align diverse teams, and guide decisions responsibly through uncertainty. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Wasn't that amazing? As a chemical engineering student, it is extremely valuable to hear from a USask engineering grad who has made such incredible strides in various industries. I found your career through taking leaps, fostering connection, and developing your intuition very insightful as I work towards my own career in engineering.
Rob, thank you for sharing your journey with us this evening. Your words about trusting yourself are something that I, and I know many others here, could learn greatly from. As a young engineer and a huge football fan, it's incredibly inspiring to hear from a USask graduate whose career has made such a meaningful impact in both industry and the community. It helps initiate drive in me to become a leader someday as well. I would now like to invite Dr. Oon-Doo Baik, Professor and Head of the Department of Chemical and Biological Engineering, to join us on stage to thank Mr. Dutton on behalf of our department and the College of Engineering.
Thank you, Caden and Olivia. On behalf of Department of Chemical and Biological Engineering, I would like to offer our sincere thanks to Rob Dutton for being our 49th C.J. Mackenzie lecturer. Ms. Dutton, it was truly an honor to host you. You were selected by the faculty of our department because of the impact of your work, leadership, and the way your career as an engineer reflects the values we aim to install in our students. Your lecture was engaging, thoughtful, and inspiring. Listening to you today, it is clear that whether in a jersey or a suit, you remain a true engineer. Your ability to seamlessly integrate the technical expertise with the leadership has not only led to great achievements, but has also created a meaningful impact for our society. Your journey makes this department incredibly proud. I would also like to extend our thanks to many people who helped make this evening possible. To our sponsors, Graham, Aecon, Peter Lucas Project Management, ADA Architecture, Co-op Refinery Complex, and Apex for their continuous support. To Olivia and Caden, thanks for being such excellent hosts, representative of our department. As chemical engineering students, you have made us proud. To Ryker and Seth, thank you for joining us tonight and representing the college and Husky athletics. To Tamara, Ashley, Rebecca, and Colin, thank you for your behind-the-scenes work, coordination, and steady support. Events like this don't come together without care and attention to detail, and we deeply appreciate it. To Dr. Richard Evitz, thank you for being the faculty representative on behalf of the department and for your guidance throughout the planning process. A special thank you to all of you for attending this evening. To our students, alumni, and friends of the college, your presence speaks to the strength of the USask engineering community. We are grateful for your time, support, and the role each of you plays in shaping the future of our college. Many thanks also, my thanks also go to the staff at Prairie Land Park for their excellent service tonight. Mr. Dutton, thank you once again for joining us and for contributing to the legacy of the C.J. Mackenzie Gala. We are grateful for your presence here tonight and for the inspiration you've provided. Now I would like to welcome Mr. Dutton. He's already on the stage, so I don't have to call him back. We have a small token of our appreciation, which is a custom piece of the art from the USask alum, Rachel Brockman. Thank you again, Mr. Dutton. Thank you very much. Would you like to open and show? Oh, sure. I don't know. Well, I can.
Thank you.
Okay. I would kindly ask Olivia, Caden, Ryker, and Seth, Dr. Abitz, and Dr. Bradley to join us for a quick group photo on the stage.
usually in the back.
I know, it's in the front.
I know.
You guys are on the set angle a little bit towards the center. Okay, I think we can get you all over here. Everybody takes a little step this way so we don't lose the I recognize it. All right. Right there. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
As we draw the curtains on the 49th C.J. Mackenzie Gala, I am filled with immense gratitude and joy for the collective effort that made tonight a resounding success. Thank you to our sponsors, Graham, Aecon, Co-op Refinery Complex, Peter Lucas Project Management, ADA Architecture, and APEGS for your support. Thank you to Prairieland Park for being an excellent host. To everyone here this evening, thank you for being a part of the USask engineering community. Your presence reflects a shared commitment to the people, ideas, and impact that shape our college. Our heartfelt thanks extend to the dedicated team behind the scenes, whose tireless commitment and creativity brought every detail to life. As we bid farewell, let us carry the spirit of community and celebration forward, knowing that tonight's celebration reflects the positive impact we continue to make as engineers. Thank you for being a part of this evening. Safe travels home, and good night.